This video is brought to you by Harold Sack, who gave me a massive 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. I was hitting the random button on EDH Rec to have it recommend some random commanders to me, and up popped Vish Kal, Blood Arbiter. An interesting one from back in the day, a 5/5 flyer for 7 mana. Sacrifice a creature for plus counters equal to the sacked creature's power, and then you can activate the ability of removing all the plus counters from it to give a creature -1/-1 for each counter removed this way. The way that I've built this deck is a combo-centered Orzhov deck, so it does aristocrats, plus counters, sacrificing infinite death loops, undying, Voltron, just all that type of stuff. This is the type of deck where you are just going to play cards onto the battlefield and accidentally trip over a combo, and there's going to be so many combos available that your opponents are probably going to have a hard time at keeping track of them all as well, which makes them more difficult to deal with, of course. So seeing as how it's right in front of me, we'll look at Sorin, Lord of Innistrad first of all. Literally only in here for the -2. Because our commander cares about power, this gives us an emblem where all our creatures get a +1 buff to their power. Might be that we can get this off twice, but pretty much just playing down Sorin and having an anthem for the rest of the game. We'll go over the more unique side of the build first of all. We've got a persist creature here in Putrid Goblin, so when it dies it re-enters with a minus counter on it if it didn't have one on there already. Geralf's Messenger is undying as opposed to persist, so it cares about plus counters, and when it enters a target opponent loses 2 life. Obviously target opponent is going to take a long time to take your opponents out, unless of course you can go infinite, which like I said is the aim of the deck. Luminous Broodmoth brings things back with flying counters if they didn't have flying already, and Machias brings things back with undying if they didn't have a plus counter on them already. Noteworthy that this is for non-humans only, of which I think most of the deck is. We'll go over the combos later, but anyone who's played Commander for more than 5 minutes knows of combos such as these, so sure you can use your imagination, but we'll flick through a few of them later. Then plus counters on mainly our commander, but if we've got any other kind of evasive creature such as the Luminous Broodmoth or anything with a flying counter on it, then cards like Blade of the Bloodchief and Terrarian Soul Cleaver are going to get buffed up massively as creatures die over and over again into our various combinations. The Ozolith can help protect us here as well if we just so happen to get spot removal or wrathed or whatever. Then the plus counters will get piled onto this, and then we can hopefully wait until the next turn in order to get the plus counters back onto said creature and still threaten damage. Cordial Vampire, our commander is a vampire, so not only will it make itself massive, but it will make our commander massive as well, and this triggers on any creature dying, so it includes our opponent's stuff as well. The aristocrat stuff is pretty typical: Blood Artist, Cruel Celebrant because we're in Orzhov, Zulaport Cutthroat and the Bastion of Remembrance are all means of getting through the infinite death loop combos and draining our opponents down to 0, but ideally we would want to be putting a lot of plus counters on our commander and getting through combat damage and gaining life that way whilst one-shotting our opponents, because it's just a more fun way to win. Obviously you can only take out one player at a time with that though. So for the aristocrat stuff you're going to need some sack outlets and sack fodder, and I've mainly focused with regards to sack outlets anywhere we can on anything that cares about counters, so Carrion Feeder and Bartolome sacrifice another creature and get a plus counter, whereas Yawgmoth Physician puts minus counters on creatures, so it's noteworthy that with this we can undo the undying of a creature if it's relevant. So putting a minus counter on a creature with a plus counter will negate both the counters, and then undying or persist is back online at that point. Could be relevant in order to enable one of the 10 million combos in the list. Ashnod's Altar goes in pretty much every sack outlet deck. And oh, I forgot Yahenni over here as well, another sack outlet that cares about plus counters, so this having haste can be relevant as well, comes down straight after a board wipe and starts comboing off and one-shot somebody. But it's handy to have sack fodder as well along the way, not only for chump blocks, but to actually have something to sacrifice into said sack outlets. Not much point having these in play if we don't have anything to sacrifice. So Bitter Blossom gets us a chump for free in the air at the beginning of our upkeep. Ophiomancer during every single turn, as long as we are willing to sacrifice into something like this every turn. And these getting plus counters every turn to the snake being sacrificed makes total sense. Obviously the same goes for our commander with regards to its plus counters. Then Pawn of Ulamog seeing the non-token creatures dying is going to generate tokens for us that can not only sacrifice themselves for additional mana, those being the spawn tokens, but those tokens could also be sacrificed into something such as Ashnod's Altar or the Yawgmoth. So with the Pawn of Ulamog, we would like to see things such as Bloodghast, Nether Traitor and Reassembling Skeleton, because these are the non-token creatures that can reanimate themselves and be sacrificed over and over again, making more sack fodder from something like Pawn of Ulamog. But we do have some reanimation stuff in the list as well, the obvious culprits being Reanimate and Animate Dead. Victimize, because we want to sacrifice things anyway, we might as well sacrifice a creature in order to get sacrifice and death triggers, and then reanimate a couple of really good things. Carmen goes really well with the plus counter sub-theme, just so happens to be a vampire as well. Whenever any player sacrifices any permanent, put a plus counter on it and gain a life, so it's going to get massive on its own anyway, making it a flying threat all by itself. But also, whenever it attacks, return a permanent with mana value less than or equal to its power, and that goes straight onto the battlefield. So really high upside for this. If you miss any of your combo pieces, someone blows up an Ashnod's Altar straight away because it's Ashnod's Altar and it's not going to do anything good for your opponents, you can go and fish it back with Carmen, or something like the Sun Titan also goes after permanents, the downside of this one being that it can only grab 3 CMC or less. Most of our stuff is as small as 3 CMC or less, so these two pieces should be able to keep us in our combo cards, as long as our opponents don't go for exile, that is. And then the spot removal pieces are nothing to write home about really, apart from Grave Pact and the Dictate of Erebos. Any black deck that wants to sacrifice things should really consider including these, because it's going to make it next to impossible for your opponents to keep their stuff in play, even if they are indestructible. And then with a bit of a reanimation theme as well, being able to cycle something like this in and out of the graveyard with a card such as Machaos the Unhallowed, we're going to be exiling permanents left, right and centre, so might not be too easy to go infinite with this, but it's upon entry and upon death, so you may well be able to get it off multiple times during a turn cycle if you can knock the Undying off it with Yawgmoth or something like that, and that's going to be plenty to give your opponents enough of a headache to either scoop if it's Magic Online, or just feel like they are banging their head against the wall and it's probably going to feel like an inevitability that they're going to lose to your deck here. While we're on removal, just have a quick look at the Wraths, some more aristocrat type shenanigans in Meat Hut Massacre. Single combat, good for Voltron builds. Hopefully we'll be able to keep our commander or some other massive creature that has a lot of plus counters on it with single combat. Each of our opponents get to keep one creature and sacrifice the rest, so this gets around indestructible nicely as well. And then Austere Command, a really good modal Wrath, but definitely need a means of getting rid of artifacts or enchantments if our colours allow it. So before we get onto the combos, which is the main bulk of the deck, just need to have a quick look at the ramp. Soulstone, reanimate stuff. Everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. Burnished Heart sacrifices itself, so that would go well with stuff like the Grave Pact. Pitiless Plunderer, no doubt part of many combos, making infinite treasure tokens for us. And this is a bracket 3 list, so one of 3 game changers is the Smothering Tithe. I'll have a look at the other 2 if I remember. In fact, here they are right now. A Demonic Tutor, didn't have anywhere else to put it, so it's in the card draw category here. Our second game changer, and the third being the Necropotence. We want to gain a lot of life with this list, so keeping our hand full with Necropotence shouldn't be all that difficult, and we're not really worried about discarding and exiling the cards that we do discard. Skullclamp going on some 1 toughness tokens is excellent, but we've got plenty of sack outlets in the list, so we can pretty much put it on any creature and sacrifice it to draw a couple of cards with this thing. Then it's some regular black card draw spells. Read the Bones can show you up to 4 cards off the top of your list. And Night's Whisper, Signing Blood, 2 mana, 2 life, 2 cards. And then Grim Haruspex and Midnight Reaper, love to see your non-token creatures dying. They will draw you a card when they do that. For some reason Midnight Reaper will lose you life to that, or it is damage specifically, so if you were to give this lifelink you could actually negate it, but we're not going to be too worried about that in a Lifegain deck. And finally, Lily, a static ability that also wants to see the creatures die and draws us a card every time we do that. The other abilities are excellent as well, but I'm sure you know what she does by now. So I'll go over to the website combo-finder now. You can paste your deck list into the text box there and it will give you all the known combos that the deck contains. of which there will be many for this one. So as we can see here, there are 21 combos found. There'll be a lot of redundancy here. First one that we are looking at is a sack outlet with Machias, and in this instance the sack outlet is your Henny. So we can get infinite leave and enter the battlefields, infinite sack triggers and infinite death triggers. And the way we do it is by having your Henny sacrifice a persist creature, so it comes back with a minus counter, and then if we sacrifice the persist creature again, it will come back with a plus counter because of the undying on Machias, and you can just infinitely go for the persist and undying reanimation. It will come back with a minus counter, then a plus counter, then a minus counter, then a plus counter, all the while your sack outlets that care about plus counters of their own, be it your commander, your Henny, or Carrion Feeder, there's the Bartolome as well, which is here. They are all getting bigger and bigger as you do this. Add an Ashnod's Altar into the list and you are making infinite colourless mana as well. And while we're talking about Machias, let's stick with him as a main combo piece. He goes infinite with our commander alone. The Vish Kal Blood Arbiter can sacrifice itself, so whilst it doesn't have any plus counters on it, you can sacrifice it to its own ability. It will come back with Undying because it's not a human, so it will then have a plus counter. Remove the 1 plus counter with the ability at the bottom in order to give a creature -1/-1, and now you've removed the plus counter, you can sack it again for the Undying and you rinse and repeat. On somewhere like Magic Online it would take forever and a day, but at a paper table, you just show your opponents the infinite loop and you basically wipe out all their creatures doing this. Add in some kind of aristocrat effect and you are also draining your opponents the whole time as well. We know Machias and Persist goes very well together, but it also goes well with Luminous Broodmoth because the flying counter is going to replace the Undying effect. There's going to be some replacement trigger shenanigans here, so if you have a creature and you sacrifice it to the sack outlet, just say it comes back in with a plus counter to Machias, then sacrifice it again. The Undying will not trigger because it had a plus counter, but the Luminous Broodmoth will, so it will re-enter with a flying counter and not a plus counter, because that got knocked off when it died, and you rinse and repeat at this point. Again, your sack outlets are getting bigger and bigger as you do that, or add the Ashnod's Altar in order to make the infinite colourless mana. And obviously with all these death loops, if you add a drain effect, then you are going to be draining your opponent infinitely as well. Luminous Broodmoth reanimating things left, right and centre, along with something like the Pitiless Plunderer, a sack outlet, and something where you can pay to reanimate it, is just going to allow you to get the infinite death loop as well. Pitiless Plunderer is the type of card where you're just going to stumble into combos by accident with it. Sacrifice Reassembling Skeleton once, and it will re-enter with a flying counter on it. You've made a treasure token to that with Pitiless Plunderer. Sacrifice it again, and it will stay in the graveyard. You've now got 2 treasure tokens from the Plunderer, which you can use to activate the Reassembling Skeleton, returning it to play, and doing the whole thing again. So now you've got infinite drain. If you've got the Grave Pact or Dictator of Erebos in play, you are wiping out all your opponent's creatures as well, which can hopefully clear the way for something like your commander to deal the lethal commander damage, or Bartolome to knock the opponents down by 40 life in one fell swoop. Doesn't matter what their life total is at that point because this is infinite, so you've got infinite power on any of these creatures. A similar combo, and this is the last one I'll go over because there's a lot of redundancy in these. You can always have a look on this website and paste the deck list in yourself if you want to. With this one we get infinite coloured mana and colourless mana, along with the infinite death triggers and plus counters. So your Henny, sacrifice the Nether Traitor, and that will make a Pawn of Ulamog Eldrazi Spawn token. Those can be sacrificed for colourless, and we'll get a treasure token as well, so we are 2 mana up on the deal at the moment. Sacrifice the Eldrazi Spawn for a colourless mana, triggers the Pitiless Plunderer again, because it triggers on tokens unusually, and then crack one of the 2 treasure tokens in order to pay for the Nether Traitor trigger. That brings that back into play. It triggered off the Eldrazi Spawn being sacrificed, so now you've got Nether Traitor back in play, and you are up a mana on the Pitiless Plunderer. So now you've got infinite mana if you needed to make that. You could include something like Exsanguinate or something like that in the list, if you cared particularly about using infinite mana stuff. I didn't because I think the list is combo heavy enough as it is, but there's nothing to stop you adding to the list and editing it a bit yourself to your own taste. So there we are, Vish Kal Blood Arbiter is a massively combo heavy deck. It's going to be difficult to keep track of all the combos that are available to you, but if you stay vigilant and keep track of the cards that are in play as well as what you have managed to draw into, then you should be able to jump scare your opponents into a victory. And just for style points, try to get some commander damage on your opponents and knock at least one of them out with that, because it's more fun than an aristocrat win, let's face it. Huge thank you go out to the patrons as ever. They are the ones solely keeping me around, as I've said for a while now. My stubbornness and loyalty to them is keeping me doing the channel, even during these rough patches. So hopefully you all enjoyed the content, and I will see you all in the next one. I'm TribalKai. Thank you for watching.